Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is Dr. Jaquel, nationally recognized naturopathic physician, here with my new group for integrative providers, here to help integrative doctors build successful and scalable businesses to thrive both in business and personally. So we're here today in 10 minutes or less Tuesdays. I have this every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And let me just make sure my volume is up. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to actually share quickly to my private Facebook group called Naturalpreneurs. So if you have not had a chance to join in, please join Naturalpreneurs, Natural Preneurs. And there are 3 questions we ask in terms of what provider type, your email address so that you can get you updates, and also so you can get alerted about specific lives that we'll only do in our private Facebook group. So I'm actually going to just make it a watch party so everybody in that group can see this live right now. One moment. Okay, here we go. Let's see if I can figure this out. Okay, great. So we're started in the watch party, Naturalpreneurs. So again, Dr. Jaquel, nationally recognized naturopathic physician. And if you do come on, please say hi. If you have any questions at all, please drop it here in the comment box. If you catch this later, please click #replay. And if you find that this will be helpful for somebody, please tag them in here in the comment section. So again, today we are talking about bookkeeping and accounting in 10 minutes or less Tuesdays, every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this actually comes up often in integrative providers, doctors that I work with, in terms of knowledge about when to work with a bookkeeper versus an accountant, when you should pull in an accountant. Also often get questions on what are the credentials as well for either basically an accountant or a bookkeeper. And so it's really important, especially even in starting your business. Oftentimes people do not look at getting a bookkeeper or accountant until they began their business for a period of time. And sometimes also when it's too late. And it really is important to get one in the beginning of starting a business. If you have not done so, that is fine. You can still start right away. And so we're going to talk about, firstly, the difference between a bookkeeper and accountant, and then also how do you work with both of them. And the third thing will be, which one would be the one you want to begin with, especially if you're a new business, a small business, a growing business, do not have, let's say, many transactions to manage. At what step do you bring an accountant versus a bookkeeper, or should you have both? So the question to that one piece I'm going to answer right away is you definitely need to have both. A bookkeeper is one of the ones you definitely want to begin with, because what their role is to record your, basically journaling. So they're recording your transactions. So a bookkeeper that you work with, they do not have to be a CPA. You want to work with someone that has actually experienced bookkeeping before. And so their primary goal is to record transactions. Again, a bookkeeper is recording of transactions. So they keep track of all of the expenses in your business. Oftentimes a bookkeeper, for example, the one I have, they will typically work with a system like QuickBooks. Hi, Dr. Ken, thank you for joining. So a bookkeeper will often set you up in QuickBooks. They will spend time linking all of your bank accounts, all of your checking accounts, all your credit cards, so they can all be streamed into your QuickBooks. Also, a bookkeeper can even help with setting up payroll systems and where they pull from. I have my bookkeeper now, for example, set up our payroll function and also help to create those deductions. So a bookkeeper can also help with that. You do not necessarily need an HR consultant or an HR person to do that, or for you to function and do that yourself. So a bookkeeper can help handle that as well. And what they're going to be looking at is your daily transactions. They'll be pulling statements, again, bank statements. They'll be reconciling and sometimes asking questions. So oftentimes my bookkeeper will reach out to me once a week, ask me a question about a transaction to figure out how that should be marked accordingly. Should it be in marketing? Should it be in computer and IT expenses? Should it be in operations? Should it be in travel? So a bookkeeper will often work with you to decide how those transactions should be recorded in your journal, your chart. So that's the first thing. They also will help with things like receipts. So in my office, I often have things automated. We do QuickBooks Online. Some people do QuickBooks Desktop. I've had both. What's great about QuickBooks Online is that you can access that anywhere you are. So if you're a person that travels a lot, or you want to be able to have quick, easy access outside of being on a desktop computer or on, on your phone, for example, a QuickBooks Online is a better format. And then oftentimes you can work with other people, sometimes remotely if you're working with a bookkeeper. They do not have to be a bookkeeper in-house. So that's one thing in terms of the duties of a bookkeeper. Again, they do not have to be a CPA. One of the things I do is I meet with my bookkeeper once a week shortly to go over those transactions, because oftentimes at the end of the month, it's really hard to remember all the transactions you had. So we go over that quickly once a week with my bookkeeper. So the other piece now we're going to talk about, so we talked about the bookkeeper, is the accountant. So an accountant can do all of those functions. They could still record transactions just like a bookkeeper can do. And they can really manage your bookkeeping expenses or your bookkeeping activities that a normal bookkeeper would keep. However, you want to be really mindful of having a bookkeeper handle all of it because firstly, an accountant is going to be much more expensive. You want to make sure your accountant, obviously they have a CPA, certified public accountant, so they are actually trained and authorized to do so. So making sure they have the proper qualifications. They can do bookkeeping, but again, it's going to be way, way more expensive. The other thing is in terms of, hi, Dr. Janine, in terms of controls for your business, you want to make sure those controls are separated out. So it's always good to have a bookkeeper and then an accountant, because an accountant can now also review the work that the bookkeeper is making. You do never, absolutely never want to have someone managing all transactions in your business with no other oversight from another objective person to be able to audit your transactions. No matter if that's your best friend that's your bookkeeper or your accountant or someone you work really well with, you always want to have good checks and balances and separate people to be able to look at your work. So that's what's great about having a bookkeeper versus an accountant that does everything. There's no real check and balance. So if you do have that, you often also want to look at having multiple accountants every once in a while just to audit and look at your records fully. So again, an accountant, you want to make sure they have a CPA. They can do all the functions a bookkeeper has. However, one of the things they help to develop is the financial growth of your business in terms of planning for that. So with my accountant, I might say, hey, I want to hire another staff. What forecast would that look like? Is that something I can afford? They will also look at things like your profit and loss statement. So the great thing about your accountant is they can actually work with your bookkeeper to also get those statements, or they can pull them themselves. I often look at my P&Ls every week. And so an accountant can actually look at those P&Ls and discuss with you, hey, you're spending too much in travel, or hey, you're spending too much in marketing expense, and looking at where costs can be cut. So they're really working in some ways, a really good one in a consulting capacity to advise you regularly on where you're maybe spending too much, or you could spend more on, or where you should spend less on. So an accountant you work with should really be a partner. So I know a lot of people that work with accountants, they only meet with them at the end of the year to submit their taxes. That is not an ideal relationship with an accountant. You want an accountant like mine who worries about my financial statements more than me and might even email me late on a Friday night clarifying things as the year ends, that just happened at the end of the year. So you want an accountant that you're meeting with really once a month, and not something where you're just closing it out once a year. They'll also do things like submit your quarterly taxes, which you can have your bookkeeper help to consolidate. They'll submit your quarterly taxes. They'll also submit your annual statements at the end of the year. The other thing is they can help prepare you for any kinds of audits. So if you do have audits for your business, an accountant will be able to pull together that information. The other thing accountants can do for you is they can help you with your filing. So for example, if you're filing as an S Corp, as an LLC, they can oftentimes help with some of those basic pieces of filing. However, that goes into the next piece. A lot of people use accountants for things that you should often use a lawyer for. So just be mindful of that. They can definitely help with setting up your business formation and knowing what is the best way, what's the best way to set up your business for taxes. However, you still want a lawyer's advice when it comes to some of those questions as it pertains to your business entity. So we're just going to go over that again in review. So I said in the beginning, I definitely think you need a bookkeeper and accountant. However, when you first start off your business, the most important thing initially is a bookkeeper, because they're really going to keep track of all of your daily, your ledger, basically your daily transactions, your daily expenses, what you receive revenue in, what you receive revenue out. So they're really about recording of transactions. So ultimately, even if you get, when you get your accountant at the end of the year, you can now pull all the information that your bookkeeper gave to you and give it to the accountant. But ideally, you're bringing an accountant in earlier on to be able to analyze your financials on a consistent and regular basis. But definitely in a small business, begin with a bookkeeper. Oftentimes the bookkeepers, it should really be based on the amount of revenue you're bringing in the business. Some will do it by a number of transactions, but really look at it as look for a bookkeeper that's looking at it based on how your business grows, and that their cost, how much you pay them, should be really based on the amount of revenue your business is bringing in ultimately, because that's the most ideal situation. So they can also help. I had mentioned a bookkeeper with your daily transactions, setting up your QuickBooks, linking all your accounts, writing checks. Mine write checks for me to any kind of consultants I have. She'll also send any kind of 1099 forms for consultants, and also will print out statements for me as I need. And again, I meet with this bookkeeper once a week. The accountant, again, should be a CPA. They can still do all the functions a bookkeeper does. However, they can do a lot more in terms of they have a higher qualification, so they can analyze information. Just be wary, again, of using an accountant to do your bookkeeping services, because is going to be a lot more expensive. And also, again, you do not want only one person ever to manage your finances. If you only have one person, it just puts you at risk. And I've heard tons of stories of issues with money not being used correctly, marked correctly as a result of only working with one person. So that's it. There's so much more to talk about with working with an accountant and bookkeeper, how to select one, how to get some of these pieces set up. I talk a lot more about this in my modules. I have a 7-module coaching program called Through My Naturalpreneurs group that I've created, which is is part of my private group. But then if you are part of the program, it's called Profitable Integrators Group. And so we have a module, a 7-module program, and one of the modules is all on financials, understanding profit and loss, understanding income sheet, how to manage your cash flow regularly, weekly, how to do things like working with your bookkeeper and accountant, how to select it. So we go into a lot more detail. But today I wanted to do, again, the 10 minutes or less Tuesdays on bookkeeper, accounting, understanding their training and expertise, and when to use one. So thank you everybody for coming in today. Thank you, Dr. Janine. Thank you, Dr. Ken, for joining. Again, if you catch this later, please click #replay. And if you are interested in having a 10 or 30-minute one-on-one strategy session with me, please go on to Naturalpreneurs, and I'll actually put it here in the group. Great. So naturalpreneurs.com, where you could set up a 30-minute strategy session with me, so I can go through your specific needs and see if you're a good fit or interested in my 6-month coaching program, which is going to launch on April 6th. So April 6th, again, is my next group after I just started my pilot group. Thank you, Jaquel Winbush, for joining. Somebody that has my name, which is awesome. So again, naturalpreneurs.com to set up a 30-minute strategy session with me to be able to find out your specific needs, and then also to learn more about my coaching program. Again, that's going to be starting more fully on April 6th. So thank you everybody for joining me. Thanks, Dr. Janine. I was happy it's helpful for you. And I think that's it. Oh, I'm actually going to try to have a surprise Facebook Live tomorrow with my bookkeeper, and trying to interview her to ask questions about basically selecting one and what are some of the questions you should think about. So again, thank you everyone for joining me. Dr. Jekyll, nationally recognized naturopathic physician, here with naturalpreneurs, and also on my business page, Dr. Jekyll ND. And the focus of this page is to help integrated providers build successful and scalable businesses to thrive both in business and personally in life. So thank you for joining me, everyone. Have a great night. See you soon.